Once upon a time, in a village far, far away, there was a man. He had a son. The man was wealthy and he had farms and everything, but his son was very lazy. And the farmer wanted the son to understand the value of money and the value of labor. So one day, he told his son that he's going to get his evening meal only if he earned some money that day. The son was very lazy, so he spent the entire day lazing around. And then when it was evening and he was hungry, he knew that he had to give some money to his father. So he went to his mother and he asked for some money. The mother gave him some money out of love, and he went and gave that money to his father. And the father was sitting around near a fireplace. So he took the money and he threw away the money in the fire. And he got his meal. The next day, the father said the same thing. No meals unless he earns some money. So the next day, again, did not do anything, lazed around all day. And when he was hungry in the evening, he went to his elder sister and asked for some money. The elder sister, out of love, gave him some money. He took the money, gave it to his father. The father once again threw the money into the fire. The son got his meal. No problem there. The third day, same thing. All day he lazes around. Towards the evening, he feels hungry. Now he's gone to his mother, he's gone to his elder sister. He also had a younger sister who had some money. So he went to his younger sister and asked for some money. And she gave him some money out of love again. He took the money and gave it to his father. And as expected, the father threw the money into the fire. The son did not react. He got his meal and the day came to an end. Now the next day, same thing, did nothing all day long. Towards the evening when he started getting hungry, he did not have anybody left to ask money from. He's already asked money from his mother, elder sister and younger sister. So now to get a meal, he had to do some work. So he went to the nearest railway station and he looked for something to do so that he could earn some money. So a man got off from the train and he had a lot of luggage. So he volunteered. He said, I will carry your luggage to your house and, in return, I'll take some money. So the man agreed and he worked really hard. The luggage was very heavy. He picked it up. He took it to the man's home and he earned some money that day for real. He brought that money and gave it to his father. And as expected, the father took the money and threw it into the fire. The moment the money fell into the fire, the son was absolutely aggravated. He said, what the hell did you do? Why did you throw away the money? That's when the father said, now you know what the value for money is. Now you know what it means to work for a living. Today we are going to talk about skin in the game. Until you have some skin in the game, you don't realize the value that you are driving. The word skin in the game, or the term skin in the game, I heard for the first time when a very good friend of mine named Darshan Thakkar told me. So what I do is I invest money in the stock market. When I was learning this, when I was learning how to invest, how to study a stock, how to identify a stock that is going to give me returns, I was a little scared because I didn't want to invest money in the stock market, but I still wanted to learn. I wanted to make a profit. And what I was doing is there are all these tools available out there that basically allow you to do paper trading, where you don't have to invest any of your money, but you can sort of play it like a game. You virtually buy a stock and then watch the price go up and down, and then you virtually sell a stock and make a profit or loss. But I wasn't really learning anything. So Darshan, I was talking to him and I was saying that I'm interested in, investing money into the stock market, and he happens to be a banker. So the advice that he gave me is, unless you get skin in the game, you will never be able to learn anything. You're not really concerned. You're doing virtual trades and whether you make a profit or loss, you're not really affected. I was determined to prove him wrong. So I looked up a stock market training institute, and I paid some money to the training institute, which technically was getting my skin into the game. And it was a good amount. It was a 4 lakh rupees training. It was a very good training, very interesting training. And I learned how to invest in the stock market. Not just invest in the stock market, also swing trading and daily trading and options trading and all of that. Now, it was very interesting, but I did not still start investing. I continued to avoid the skin in the game, and I still, even though I had the technical knowledge of how to study a stock and how to study trends and so on and so forth, I was still not investing. There came a time when there's so much time went by that I started thinking that the investment that I've made in the training is going a waste. So I started investing, and it is only after I started putting skin in the game that I started understanding what stock markets are, what investments are, and so on and so forth. Now, let's associate this with enterprise architecture. I see many enterprise architecture initiatives fail. I have seen it in many organizations. I've talked to many people, my friends who are working in various organizations. I've talked to business contacts. I've tried to understand what they do when they do enterprise architecture, whether they have an enterprise architecture in their organization or not. And if they do, then do they see value in it? And how are they driving value and so on and so forth? And what I've come to realize is that organizations have enterprise architecture for periods of time. So a CIO would come in who believes in enterprise architecture. He would give it a try. They would do enterprise architecture for a bit, a couple of months or so, and they see that there's no value in it, and then initiatives fail, and then enterprise architecture teams get dismantled and so on. This happens because usually what I see is enterprise architecture teams do not have a skin in the game. They're not really affected by the decisions that are taken by them, right? Let's assume that your organization wants to do enterprise architecture, and you have two options. One is you can go to an enterprise architecture consultancy organization and ask them to do enterprise architecture for you. Now, let's say that you hire a consultant. If the enterprise architecture initiative succeeds, they get paid. Let's say that the enterprise architecture initiative does not succeed, and after 6 or 8 months, the team gets dismantled. What happens? Well, they get paid. Let's assume the other alternative. Let's say that you start your own enterprise architecture organization. What usually ends up happening is that the enterprise architecture organization does consulting. They collect information about the organization. They give advice based on that information. If the project succeeds, they are not affected. If the project does not succeed, they are not affected directly. Of course, the organization will be impacted, but there isn't really any skin in the game. And that's why I have postulated the idea of modern enterprise architecture. So I've come up with these terms called classical enterprise architecture and modern enterprise architecture. And let's look at some of the differences. Classical enterprise architecture used to have a dedicated team. Right? There would be an enterprise architecture team. There would be a head of enterprise architecture, and then there'd be domain architects and what have you. And the primary job that this team would do is approve various projects. They would basically add bureaucracy to the organization. They would look at every project that goes into enterprise, goes into implementation. They would approve or disapprove the projects. They would set up standards, and they would make sure that the implementation follows the standards that have been set by the enterprise architecture team. And of course, they gather information about the enterprise. They try to create a baseline architecture, a target architecture like TOGAF defines it, or like Zachman defines it. They would have these layers, and there's different perspectives, and they would collect information about the enterprise. And all of this is really good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there was a time when this worked for a bit, and it works for a bit in almost all organizations. But I still don't see skin in the game. I still don't see the enterprise architecture organizations being affected by project failures. And the concept of skin in the game was, by the way, introduced by Nassim Taleb in a book called Skin in the Game. And what he says is that the motivation for people to do something creative is less affected by the bonus or the benefits that they're going to get out of the activity that they are performing, and is more motivated by the disincentives that they are going to get if they fail. So if you are directly penalized because of a failure in an activity that you're responsible for, you'll be more motivated to make the project a success. There's another book, Thinking Fast and Slow, and this is, by the way, written by Tversky and Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman. And they said that, again, the motivation derived by the incentive of the initiative is less than the motivation derived by the losses that you're going to face if you fail. And majority of the times I see that enterprise architecture teams are not really affected by project failures. They don't have any disincentives of failure. Right? So classical enterprise architecture does not have that. Classical enterprise architecture does not have skin in the game. So I've postulated an idea of modern enterprise architecture, and this is a concept that I'm still developing. I'm still thinking about all of this, and I would really look for your perspective about what I think. So modern enterprise architecture should have no dedicated enterprise architecture team. What that means is every IT team, every team within IT is a team with enterprise architects. You may not have the title enterprise architecture. You may not have people who are qualified enterprise architecture, but everybody needs to understand the concepts of enterprise architecture, and it would be a good idea to have them certified. So all the work that you're doing really is work for the enterprise. All the work that you're doing needs to be designed so that it affects the enterprise in a positive way. So everyone in IT is an enterprise architect. Everyone understands and follows the standards. They understand the value of standards. Standards are, by the way, documented and published in a repository that is accessible to everyone, and they need to follow these standards. Now, is there going to be a dedicated governance team? You could have a dedicated governance team that essentially ensures that the standards are being complied to, but it's not a very authoritative structure. The governance team, what it does is it looks at the reports of how various projects are either following or not following the standards, and produces those reports to the various teams that are really working on various projects. Every team collects information about the enterprise, by the way, right? So when you run a project, let's say you're doing application modernization. So you collect information about your applications which are either legacy or outdated or what have you. And as you modernize them, you create your baseline architectures and your target architectures. You look at the gaps between the baseline and the target. You look at all the building blocks that are going to change to go from baseline to target. And you document all of that in an enterprise architecture repository. So it becomes your own responsibility to document the projects that you're running, the transformations that you're bringing in. Now, there is a risk that you might document it in an incorrect manner. Another risk is that you might lose the big picture perspective, and that essentially becomes an important part of everybody's job. You take a look at the bigger picture view. You try to understand the organizational structure and your technology landscape and your applications landscape, and so on and so forth. And you try to understand where your project fits in. So it becomes the job of every single IT organization to make sure that they are aligned with the larger big picture perspective. And then and of course there is the risk of documenting it in an incorrect manner where the governance plays an important role. The governance team would not enforce people to document it in the right way. There won't be a dedicated team that would do the documentation in the right way. Everybody is responsible for doing it the right way. And a report is presented by the governance team to show the amount of compliance that various teams have had. And if there is a lack of compliance, if people have not followed the standards, then that needs to be showcased. And you could gamify it, right? You could say, okay, X number of standards have not been followed by, ABC team, and, they need to go and fix it. So that is primarily the difference between classical enterprise architecture and modern enterprise architecture. And one of the key components of modern enterprise architecture is everybody has a skin in the game. If their project fails to meet the standards, if their project fails to deliver the transformation that they are delivering, they are directly impacted by that. Every single person is impacted in their performance reviews. Every team is impacted by not being able to meet the KPIs. And of course, if they succeed, then they reap the benefits. So what I'm trying to say is, if you are going to get the benefits of a successful project, it also is important that you share the risks of project failure. And that is the only way that enterprise architecture can deliver value. Not as a team, a dedicated team of enterprise architects, but more as a culture. Enterprise architecture becomes a culture within the organization. Everybody looks at the bigger picture view. Everybody understands what their role is in the larger perspective. But this is a concept, like I said, that I'm still developing, and I would really like to hear your thoughts about it, what you think about it. Once again, I would like to remind you that if you enjoyed this content, then like and subscribe. If you know someone who would enjoy this content, then don't forget to share it with them, whether you use social media or WhatsApp or Telegram or LinkedIn or what have you. Share this link. In fact, I would suggest you stop or pause the podcast right now and share it with a friend or a family member or a colleague who would enjoy this. And it would go a long way for the podcast. And remember, the main purpose of this podcast is to get the EA community together and start some interesting conversations. Look up Enterprise Architecture Radio on LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram, or any other medium. There's a high chance that you'll find it. Join the conversations. Talk about your work, talk about your ideas, listen to other people's ideas, learn, and of course, guide others.